there's a concept that in surfing that when the waves are running, everyone's a good surfer, right? Judge people by when the waves aren't running. And I think right now, who's going to come out of this, how they're going to come out of it, is not going to be a unilateral movement. It's going to be very, very rifle specific. Some people are going to get crushed. Some people are going to come out of it. Some people are going to think they came out of it, and 5 years down the line, they'll realize that they didn't come out of it.
All right, welcome back to the Witz Podcast. Once again, we have a wicked awesome guest today, Mr. Mike Aron, who's got 25 years of global experience in corporate finance, mergers and acquisitions, banking and entrepreneurship. He is the co-founder and director of Cidel Bank Trust, an international private bank, and co-founder of various alternative investment funds. And while he's been doing all of this, he still manages his own family office. And prior to Cidel, he was also the senior executive at Bayshore Bank and senior manager at KPMG. This dude has got a wicked background, including the fact that he's a chartered accountant. And today we're going to talk about a ton. We're going to talk about what it takes to make it in today's economy. You know, what are some values that we need to ensure that we're living, not just in our personal life, but our professional life to ensure success, investment ideas, what the future looks like. And again, just how do we live what we call real-time strategy? I don't think there's a better person to be talking to today, considering our current climate. Mike, welcome to the show. So Mike, why don't we start off with the big question? I mean, you know, you run a lot of businesses. You've started businesses. You've been around the corporate world. Living in today's economic climate, give us your take. I mean, let's just start with there. Like, I mean, what do you think's going out there in business? What's the next year of business looking like? Do you think we're going to come out of this maybe sooner?
I think if anything that today's world has taught us all, it's humbled us all and ensured that any person who's active in business, leadership of any format is just a student. So someone asked me recently, they came to me and said, Mike, you know, one of the things we've always admired about you is you're a strategist, and that translates into tactics. And I looked at this person and I said, I don't think anyone's a strategist at the moment. I think at this moment in time, it's purely tactical. Mm-hmm. And every day and every week for me is a zig and a zag.
Mm-hmm. So when you say tactical, what do you mean? Like more like instinctual, like your obviously the strategy's been thrown out and now it's almost like living real time strategy.
Correct. So I think of a strategist as when you start a chess game, you know what the end in sight is and you work backwards with your moves. I think this is more like a checkers game, like a backgammon game. Yeah. Where you're moving because you have to move and your opponent, let's call it, or the other side's waiting for you to move. But to know ultimately where you're moving towards is purely based, I think, based on experience, instincts, and who you listen to. I think there's never been a more important time now than to listen to a deep and wide bench of wisdom and experience. Because you say, do we think we're going to come out of it? I think, you know, in the good old days, you know, there's a concept that in surfing that when the waves are running, everyone's a good surfer, right? Judge people by when the waves aren't running. And I think right now, who's going to come out of this, how they're going to come out of it, is not going to be a unilateral movement. It's going to be very, very rifle specific. Some people are going to get crushed. Some people are going to come out of it. Some people are going to think they came out of it. And 5 years down the line, they'll realize that they didn't come out of it. Just to jump on one more thing, Greg, you know, some people say to me, I'm coming out of it. And I say, how are you coming out of it? So, well, I've got some hard money debt. To take me through the next few months, or alternatively, I brought in a bunch of new private equity type people. And the question I ask him is, so how are you coming out of it? What do you mean? I said, well, if you've got hard money debt at 15%, you're going to work the next 3 years for those lenders, right? So you probably have nothing at the end. You brought in a whole lot of private equity money, I'm assuming it was at low valuations, so you've been heavily diluted. So again, how are you going to come out of it? And I think those are the kind of questions we really have to ask ourselves now.
Yeah. So there's that wonderful saying, there's no such thing as free money. I hear people say that all the time. Oh, it's cheap money right now. And I'm like, yeah, but what happens when you spend that money and you owe on it, like, you know, years later? But, you know, I'm in that position as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you know, cash is king right now, right? So where's the balance? I mean, what advice would you give me when it came down to things like, you know, borrowing and bringing in that equity?
Because you're an entrepreneur. I've seen your bio, right? You're a true entrepreneur. You know, you take on challenges. You embrace risk as opportunity as opposed to fear. So you're a person then naturally should be looking at cost of capital now. If I can bring on cash at 5%, let's just say that's my opportunity cost, that's my hurdle rate on the cash I bring in. Being an entrepreneur, I embrace a calculated fear and calculated risk, but I feel confident that over a 3-year time frame, I can generate a delta of somewhere between 3 and 5% on that cost of capital. We know it's not guaranteed, but you've proven that you're a person that can go through a wall if you have to. Mm-hmm. Some people that are singularly focused business people, but not entrepreneurs, meaning they've had one business, let's say automotive manufacturing business, let's just say. That's what they've done their whole life. They've never really branched out of that singular line of business strategy. I'm not sure they're an entrepreneur. I think they're a good business person.
Right.
Should that person be taking on money right now, sort of debt? I would say no, because I'm not sure that they're going to zig and zag to get that delta on the cost of capital.
You know, in some regards, there's everyone wants to be an entrepreneur, right? But you just said something, a really good business person, right? I mean, is that the difference between maybe what a really solid, good business person is versus that entrepreneur is the ability to zig and zag and, you know, adapt and pivot? I hate the word pivot because it's overused so much right now, but is that how you characterize it?
You know, it's funny because I had a discussion. My son has a bunch of friends that recently came from New York and they're all finishing business school. And I overheard a conversation. One guy says, I want to be an entrepreneur. And the other guy said, why? Freedom and flexibility of an entrepreneur. I couldn't help but ask the person and say, you want to be an entrepreneur? During your high school and college years, what have you done that's entrepreneurial?
Right.
The kid has done nothing. I said, it strikes me that an entrepreneur doesn't get created. It's almost like the concept of a diamond. You take a diamond out of the ground, it's dirty, it's murky, but you polish it.
Right.
You can't take a piece of coal out of the ground and polish it and make it into a diamond.
Right.
So I said to this young man, I said, I think based on what you tell me about yourself, you could probably be a good business person. Mm-hmm. I don't think that you're necessarily an entrepreneur. I'm sure like you remember when you were like 10 years old and you were trading something to create.
I was hustling garbage pail kit cards back in the day, right? Which were in the, you know, like a baseball card, but, you know, gross test little characters puking up and doing nasty little things on these cards. But yeah, that was, in fact, I remember my first, in fact, I've just had this flashback now where I bought a pack of garbage pail cards from this kid at school. I can't even remember who, but it was this whole negotiation. I think I negotiated something like some rands. There were definitely some rands in there, and some sort of like contribution. I can't remember what it is, but yeah, you know, I think so. How did that guy take it? I mean, what did this kid say? Was he insulted? Was he like, thank you for like, you know, helping me clarify where I should be going?
I don't think that that age group, that 20 to 23-year-old age group, likes to be told or likes to be receive input that doesn't correlate with their own self-image.
Right.
My sense is that this particular person like kind of looked at me and said, like, what does he know? Some of his friends got it and actually concurred. Because he said to me, so what did you do when you were that age? I said, well, when I was 10 years old, I used to walk around my suburb, and go to people who are too lazy to take their Coca-Cola and Sprite bottles back to get a deposit. I collect them or I go get the deposits. I've got to keep them. And the other thing is all of my buddies like to play pinball at the local variety store. Their parents didn't. So they'd pay me to stand watch. And then I had cash, and with that cash, I bought and sold things. So the guy's like, yeah, well, those opportunities don't exist anymore. I said, but there is something. And if you grab that, then I'd say, good, you're going to be an entrepreneur.
Right. But I mean, it's, you know, there are those opportunities right now. There's 1,000%. You could literally, all jokes aside, I mean, Gary Vee talks about this all the time, which is go to a garage sale, right, in your local neighborhood, find that sort of gem that's there for $5 that's worth 50, stick it on eBay and Bob's your uncle kind of thing, right? I think, you know, people, and maybe to this point, maybe that generation, they think just too macro, which is, it's just like, you know, it's all or nothing, right? I don't understand the path. And, you know, I would never call myself an entrepreneur back in the day. Today I would, you know, 23, 24 years into it. What do? Well, I'm an entrepreneur. Well, why? Well, I run this business and like, you know, it's bobbing and weaving and it's, you know, I'm always looking to sort of add and build and create and find something else to sell and find another way to build success, et cetera, et cetera. So I like what you said before, which is that whole diamond analogy, which is, these things are not made, they're polished. Polished is a great word. Hey, I'm Greg Witz. Thanks so much for coming and checking out the video. If you like that video, you're going to love the next one. So I'd highly suggest that you click this video over here. And don't forget to subscribe and share.